Whether it's because of the globalization of the game, the advancements in health that's prolonged players' careers, or the evolution of skills that help players get good faster and stay good longer, it's an almost indisputable fact that the pool of talent the NBA currently has is the deepest pool of talent it's ever had. I'm talking Lil Wayne, Big Sean, Dark Sky Paradise type deep. And it's this incredible, almost inconceivable depth that's going to make the who are the top 25 players in the league discussion so intriguing, as there truly are no wrong or correct answers. Well, no correct answers except for one: the sweatshops. So if you enjoy this content, like and subscribe, comment down below your top 25 player hot takes, share the video with a friend, and welcome to the Sweatshops Top 25 Honorable Mentions. Okay, before we get into the video, let me give y'all a disclaimer. I lied to you. This top 25 player ranking was hard as shit. The hardest thing I've done since watched Star Wars Acolyte. I have genuinely lost sleep over this list. The names that I just left off, had me convinced the basketball gods were prepping a lightning bolt to strike me down. And that's a good thing. My almost paralyzing indecision on who to leave off and who to include in this list is just a testament to the evolution of NBA players and how good they've really gotten. The talent level has frankly gotten ridiculous. Solid role players who would have been key rotation players on a championship team just a decade ago are putting up stat lines identical to me sitting at home on my couch, only out there for cardio and morale. The Patrick Beverley archetype, if you will. It's this insane average talent level that's made NBA champions so difficult to predict and made top 25 player lists such interesting discussions, because there's a nearly infinite amount of permutations as to who you can have on your list, let alone who you rank where. And as long as you aren't this goober, they most likely all reasonable. So to reflect this, I decided to adopt something I've seen Thinking Basketball do a lot and add it into my rankings. If you are an OG sweatshopper, and by OG I mean OG, as in you watch the literal first video on this channel, then you know the way I look at player rankings is what I believe is the only way you should look at player rankings: a draft. If the NBA decided to completely reset the league and do a fantasy draft with every single player, and you were one of the GMs, what order would you draft these guys if the only motivation is to win a championship in the upcoming season? That to me is the only way to properly incorporate everything a player does into their ranking. When it came to the video portion, I would then support the decisions I made based on this criteria by going into a bit of the history of the player, what I liked about them, what I didn't like, some stats, some film study, some anecdotes, and then I'd go on to the next. This year I want to do the same thing. Only difference is, in addition to the ranking, I'm also going to add a range of what I consider reasonable rankings for the player in question, just to hammer home my genuine belief that unless you are actively trying to make a bad list or have watched zero basketball in the last 5 years, there are no wrong answers. So for instance, my number 4 player, for me personally, is the number 4 best player in the league. But if you said he was anywhere from 3rd all the way down to 8th, I honestly wouldn't argue with you too much. So please take that into account when you actively trying to take my will to live in the comment section. Another change from last year that I would like to talk about is projections. Last year, I did not rank players based on how I thought they would perform in the upcoming season. I ranked them based on the performance they had shown us up to that point. For instance, I had SGA at 15, I believe, last year, because that's what he had shown us up to then. But in my case for him, I said he was probably going to jump into the top 10 by the end of the season, which he has for most people. This year though, I want to take projections into account in the actual ranking. So I'm still gonna try to remain somewhat conservative. For instance, for year 2 Wemby, the ceiling is literally the roof. However, I'm probably gonna have his official rankings in the 15 to 25 area just because he hasn't shown us much yet. My irresponsible projections for these guys though will be reflected just more in the ranges rather than the actual ranking. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into these honorable mentions, starting it off with the infirmary. The purpose of this group should be made pretty clear by the name. These are the guys who I refuse to rank solely because of their health. No disrespect to either, but if I'm a GM and my team's season hinges on the health of Zion Williamson and or Kawhi Leonard, then I failed my team and I deserve unemployment. We just have too much evidence from the past 5 years. How the you supposed to say assuming everyone's healthy when talking about the championship chances the Clippers or Pelicans will have in the upcoming season? Zion and Kawhi are always unhealthy. It's a near constant in this timeline. Assuming Taco Bell made your quesadilla without a tortilla. Assuming Nav don't release a song that's hot ass. Assuming P. Diddy is innocent. Like, no bro, it's a part of their identity. Zion has literally missed more games than he's played in his career. And I am genuinely surprised when I see Kawhi play 3 consecutive regular season games. How could I justify to my boss picking either of these guys over someone with half their talent, but who I can at least bet on to be there at the end of the season? You can't. If they were moderately healthy, I'd probably have both in the 10 to 15 range, but you can't count on them for 10 to 15 games. So I'm putting them on this list. The second group in the honorable mentions is the clear tier below. These are the guys that I feel like we are just conditioned to call, top 25-ish players. But when you look at the actual list of guys, they are a definitive and demonstrative tier below the true top 25 talent. Jamal Murray, really solid championship winning second option, but if your whole thing is, I step it up in the playoffs, but I'm kind of mid in the regular season, you can't have a bad postseason and expect to keep your spot. Pascal Siakam, really good all-around forward, just not great at anything. Lauri Markkanen, inflated numbers on a bad team. James Harden, Paul George, Brandon Ingram, DeMar DeRozan. Sabonis is definitely towards the top of this group for me, but still he's kind of in this area. But there are so many big names who, before you put pen to paper, you just assume, oh yeah, definitely a top 25-ish guy. But then when it's time to actually name names, you realize, oh wow, nah, they like 30-ish. After this section though, we get into the true honorable mentions, the blasphemes. These are the guys whose omission from this list made me feel like I need a shower. They were honestly my main motivation for making this video, because I just felt weird not giving them the top 25 player treatment that I'm gonna give the rest of these guys. So I guess you can think of this list not as a top 25, more as a top 27, I guess. Starting with number 27, Karl Anthony Towns. Cat. What can I say about you, Cat, that hasn't already been said? I'd say he's the most polarizing player in the league, but honestly, I don't think he's that polarizing. He's the Gunna of basketball. He's fine, he's cool, he's solid. But if someone walk up to you and say, hey, my favorite rapper is Gunna, you probably not gonna take their opinions too seriously. I don't want to be too negative on Cat because this season was kind of Cat's renaissance type year. This is the first year he had any modicum of consistency in the playoffs. This is the first year where it looks like he took the defensive end of the court seriously, and he was a key part in Minnesota's first Final Four finish since George Bush was hating black people in office. And on top of that, I mean, just check Cat's toolbox. Screwdriver, hammer, electric drill, wire strippers, pause. The brother got everything. He got all the tools. Debatably the best big man shooter of all time. Great handles for a big man. Good passer. Like, the man got specced out in everything. Except he got the basketball IQ of a boulder. Watching him when he's having one of his Cat games is the worst basketball experience I can wish on anyone. It's like there's a stipulation in his contract to make the most boneheaded moves in a 48-minute time span. It's absurd to watch. He got everything you want in a modern big. But with his frequent gaffes and snafus in the postseason, and his inability to carry a team through the regular season as a first option, it'd be tough for me as a GM to look at him and be like, you know what, this is the one. I want to structure my championship roster around this guy, especially given the vast amount of talent in the league. Hence why I have him just off this list at 27. As for the range of positions, starting with the ceiling, I can see someone putting Cat as high as 25, not too much higher, but there are some guys. Cat was the second best player on the Western Conference Finals runner-up, which should give him some clout to a lot of people. And as I said before, he's a very talented player and a big man too, which is usually easier to build around. As for the floor, I can see someone putting him as low as 30. Jamal Murray, who I have lower than him, has more history being good in the playoffs. I understand if someone wouldn't want to drop him based off one bad playoff run. Pascal Siakam, also second best player on a conference finals runner-up, a little bit more fraudulent than the Timberwolves if I'm being honest, but c'est la vie. If someone wants to trust Pascal's all-around game and consistency more than Cat, I also would not be mad at that. And Sabonis, similar to Pascal, another really solid all-around big. Just without the playoff resume, I can stomach someone putting him higher than Cat too, I guess. Next up, we got number 26, the last person we're gonna talk about today, Kyrie Irving. I know, feel free to drop the hate down in the comment section. I can handle it. I honestly probably deserve it. Probably the most talented player of all time, S-tier handles, elite shot creation, the only non-X rated finishing package that still requires the viewer to procure a change of underwear. Maybe. Solid defense. Oh, and he was the second best player on the reigning Western Conference champion. Like, there ain't much more to one. When I made this list the first few times, I felt certain Kyrie had to be in the top 25. Through the first 3 revisions of my list, I had Kyrie firmly in there. Pause. But as I kept looking at the list, I felt myself continuing to make excuses for why I should include Kyrie there. And it just got to the point where I had to be honest with myself and just say, if you are making all these excuses for Kyrie, it's probably because he isn't meant to be in your top 25. My main issue with Kyrie doesn't really have anything to do with Kyrie. It's with what I've been talking about this whole video. The rest of the league is just too darn good. To put it into 2K terms, I don't think Kyrie is regressing at all. If anything, his rating has gone up a point or so. It's just all the people that were around his ranking on the list, they've all increased 5, 6, 7 overalls. 23 of the 25 guys I have on my list this year, if they were the first option on a team and you surrounded them with a competent roster, I think they could be a fringe playing team. Kyrie is a really good scorer, one of the most talented of all time. But the fact that he's not elite at anything else, good not great playmaker, solid to good defender, along with the fact that he's undersized, just has me thinking he can't be the best player on a playoff team at this point in his career. On top of that, he's probably the most injury prone person I have on the list. And as the cherry on top, the one thing that he's elite at decreases significantly when he's in the playoffs. In the 4 years Kyrie played in the postseason since he was in Cleveland, he hasn't averaged over 23 points per game once. And remember, he's usually averaging 36 to 40 plus minutes per game in the playoffs. As for the 2 out of 25 that weren't included in that 23 out of 25 that I thought could be first options on a fringe playing team, I just think they are either more dynamic or they do more things as a second option than Kyrie can do. So I personally would prefer taking them over Irving. If you value Kyrie's experience more or just straight up think he's better than them though, I'm completely cool with that, which is why my ceiling for Kyrie is 24, maybe 23, because I'm applying a little projection to the person I have in the 23rd spot. And then for his floor, I honestly think where I have him at is his floor. I tried to think about all the scenarios. Maybe if you value Cat's size, I can see you putting him over Kyrie, but Kyrie just feels like a lot more of a sure thing. So if you were in my scouting department, you'd have your work cut out trying to convince me to draft Cat over Uncle Drew. I know it seems like I hate Kyrie. I do not. Of the pure second options, I think there are 1 to 2 better than him max. The league is just really deep and I just happen to think there are 25 better guys than him. With that, thank you ladies and gentlemen for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, and also make sure to hit that notification bell to be notified right when we drop the actual beginning of our top 25 list, as well as any other videos we have coming down the pipe. Comment down below what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, where you would actually rank Kyrie and Cat, or who are your true honorable mentions. Share the video with a friend, and as always, stay sweaty, ladies and gentlemen.